Welcome to the Java Fireside Chat. I'm your host, Sharth Chander, longtime member of the Java team. It's been a while since we've done a Fireside Chat in this format, and we're pretty lucky to have four amazing individuals that will be participating today. Today, we're going to spend the next 30 minutes reflecting on the influence Java has had in the world, exploring how Java is addressing modern app dev and the opportunities that affords developers. And we'll kind of close on surfacing how the developer ecosystem is helping move Java forward. And as I said, today I'm honored to have four industry luminaries that's going to share their personal Java stories and experiences with us. We have Stephen O'Grady, principal analyst and co-founder at RedMonk. And from Oracle's Java team, George Saab, senior vice president development Java platform, chair OpenJDK governing board. Chad Aramura, Vice President, Java Developer Relations, and Donald Smith, Vice President, Java Product Management. Folks, welcome today to the inaugural Java Fireside Chat that we are doing virtually. And I thought it'd be a great way to kind of start with, it's 2023, and we're just a couple of years or a few years removed from celebrating 25 years of Java. And this being the 28th years of Java, that puts 30 years of Java just 2 years away, and that's pretty humbling. I'm trying to understand what's kind of kept Java going and kept Java vibrant from your personal experience. And I thought, Stephen, maybe we can start from you.
Sure. Well, I think it's been interesting, because people forget at this point, but the language and the platform were originally developed as essentially a I don't know, operating system, I guess you'd call it, for cable set-top boxes, right? Sort of way back when, right? And so let's say the origins of Java are very humble. Quickly evolved into sort of by dint of the design choices involved, sort of an enterprise standard. And the interesting thing I think for a lot of us in the industry is that we typically have languages that historically have sort of met a need and then failed to progress to meet other needs, right? Maybe the sort of canonical example of this industry-wise is COBOL, right? Where COBOL was written to essentially write and sort of run business applications, and it did that for years. In some cases, if you're the IRS, it still is, sort of running, or large financial houses, but it never evolved really beyond that, right? It had this sort of single function, single purpose. And Java, to its credit, has really evolved over the years and met a number of workloads, right? So obviously it was an enterprise standard for years, still is. Has been used to write web applications at times. It's been used in mobile. It's been used to write sort of large scale data applications. So I think that the single salient feature to me from a Java standpoint is just that it's proven to be adaptable and versatile in ways that certainly languages that preceded it, were essentially unable to duplicate, which is why it's still relevant today.
Yeah, George, thinking of Stephen's memories and storyline, you have been part of the Java team, perhaps from its origins, and so you bring a unique lens in that. In terms of that 28 years of evolution, what are some fond memories in terms of what's brought Java to where we are today?
Oh, wow. There have been so many. It was an amazing adventure when I started on the Java team. I actually was not in the sort of original, but I started working on Java for the 1.1, actually the 1.0.3 version came out like just when I started. And at that time we were actually JavaSoft. It wasn't even officially, kind of part of Sun proper. There were, just over 30 people in the team. It was pretty small, and grew pretty rapidly after that. And so I think, for me, there are just so many memories. Some of the first ones were, coming and being part of working on a language. I was actually convinced to come and work there by people who I worked with before on other programming languages, notably one called Prolog. And you know, the people who brought me in were like, hey, you should come and work here. We're making another language. It's just like working on Prolog, except people like this language. So that was kind of fun. And I didn't really realize what they meant until a couple months after I joined. We had it was actually the second Java 1 conference, and there were, I think, like 18,000 people there or something. And then I really realized, I was like, oh wow, people really do like this thing. So, you know, it's been an amazing journey from that time until now. And what's been kind of incredible is seeing the technology go from something that was an interesting idea and promising to being something that everyone used and wanted to use. And, you know, to the point it is today where it's not only used by a lot of people, it's a lot of people contributing to it and making it strong, all in the interest of, exactly as Steve's saying, being this thing that evolves to meet people's needs over time, and not just staying static, but really trying to you know, remain something that is relevant and, you know, is as useful today for people trying to solve problems as it was in the mid-90s, when it was young and agile and easy because we didn't have that many users.
Yeah, this is true. And you know, Chad, you've been you've had the privilege to be part of many startups, many that you've initiated and work at. And you know, in terms of reflection of what you've seen with Java to where you were introduced to it to where you are now, what really stands out for you?
I started actually programming in Java in college. I think it was version 1.2, 1.1, 1.3, right around that time, probably the year 1999 or so. And what really stands out to me is the amount of energy. I remember the amount of energy at the time about, you know, this is the language that we need to be teaching. You know, this is the language that we should be learning for the future. And there was so much energy. I was obviously far from the center of the universe where some of you were at the time, having worked on the platform. But the amount of energy that I saw in the community at that time was pretty astounding. And then I spent many years in startups where we reached for a bunch of shiny objects like Perl and PHP and then Ruby and then Golang. And then here I am 20 years later, now been on the team for just over 4 years. And what's just simply amazed me is how much Java has been embraced by the world. 20 years later, in fact, we're almost at 30 years now, as you mentioned. And as a general purpose language that Stephen was talking about earlier, to solve lots of problems really well with an extreme focus on compatibility, readability, versatility, generality, and having stewards like Oracle and like the other folks in OpenJDK really focus on those core values to ensure that they're getting this balance of innovation and conservatism to ensure that it's moving fast enough, but not too fast, and pushing it forward. I mean, that's really been impressive to watch after all these years.
No, you touch on something that's very interesting, is in that notion of thoughtful innovation, but also conservatism. It kind of puts a target on our backs. We're sometimes liked and the most liked person or liked team in the room, but also maybe we're not moving fast enough. How do we trade off those balances in terms of thoughtful innovation with you know, the investments we've made in the past that we want to ensure businesses and developers and enterprises can continue to use in the future?
Well, I can jump in there if you don't mind, actually, because I mean, you asked Stephen earlier what's led to the success of Java for over 28 years, and I think if we could sum it down into one word, it would be trust. And I think that trust in the early days came from how many different organizations were participating in the Java ecosystem. Like dozens of enterprise software companies all getting together, rallying behind the Java platform, lots of middleware, lots of innovation, so that if you were a user of enterprise software, you could absolutely trust that you were going to get whatever it is you needed for however long you needed it, because there was going to be a lot of vendors available. But then I think if you look at recent years, so if we go back and look at the pivot from Java, say 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 to the current release cadence and release model, I think we've proven that organizations can trust what we're doing for the very long term. So not like the next 5-8 years, but the next several decades, right? Because we basically took an enterprise software platform that was designed and had grown substantially in a middleware business and an application server type business, and pivoted it to be more like modern app dev, where we can not only do innovative features on a 6-month cadence and bring those to market, but we can do it in a way that respects the legacy of organizations that want to just keep applications in production. I don't want a changing API. I just want to keep things going. So, you know, some of the things like incubator modules, preview features, stuff like that, it just continues to build the trust. So we can have the best of both worlds.
I like how you honed in on the meta level topic of trust, and part of that trust is also predictability. George, I know it may seem like yesterday, but you know, back in 2017 when we introduced the 6-month release cadence, there was a apprehension perhaps on the team, but we've kind of overcome that. What has the 6-month release cadence done in terms of Java's evolution?
Yeah, thanks, Shar. As you say, I think there was a lot of apprehension, and it was widespread, right? It was apprehension among you know, users of Java. What is this going to mean for them? Is it going to work? There's apprehension among people who are working on libraries or frameworks, trying to understand if they were going to, you know, be able to keep up with this, or, you know, again, if it was even going to work. And there was definitely apprehension on my team working on the Java platform, as well as, you know, the broader set of contributors in the OpenJDK community. And so we did a lot of talking with people about this. And I think one of the things that was very clear was we needed to not just change the time frame of delivery, but change the mindset of how we thought about features we were working on and we're putting into the platform. And that really comes with a couple of dimensions. One of them has been thinking about breaking problems down into smaller increments of change. So in the past, we knew it was going to be a few years. We were taking on a big problem. We were trying to solve it in its entirety in one go. And now, like, we've seen projects where we've kind of been encouraged to break that down into smaller pieces. And so just to give you an example, we look at something like pattern matching, which in the past, we might have done in its entirety across all of the different parts of Java, all of the different idioms, right? And instead, we've seen it delivered kind of bit by bit in, you know, sort of successively more complex parts, more corners of Java syntax. And that's actually worked really well, because as we've gone on, we've been able to get feedback and make it better. And as Donald said, you know, start to use things like preview features and things like that in order to know that things are really solid before the final version. I think that's really been a super important thing. The other aspect, though, is thinking about not putting these features into the platform until we believe they're final. And so, you know, in the past, with this sort of multi-year big bang release model, you know, the incentive was put everything in so that it has a lot of bake time. And now we've sort of realized that, like, okay, with the 6-month model and the time-based model, there is no bake time. The baking has to happen before it goes in, right? And for people working on the platform initially, that was a little bit of a challenge, but it's turned out to work really, really well. And in fact, I think if you went and asked, you know, any of the people on my team, or even in the broader OpenJDK community that are, you know, contributing significant things to the platform, they would all say that, like, it's never been as smooth and as calm as it is now before releases. You know, gone are the days when everyone was going crazy, burning midnight oil, trying to cram something in, with the result of something that looked like it was crammed in. Instead, it's like, no, it's all kind of calm. It makes sense. If something looks like it's not ready, I'm not worried, because there's another one that's coming along soon, and I'm just going to target that instead. Another thing that's gone on is a bunch of investment in all of the infrastructure and all of the tests that we have. And that's also, again, you know, meant that things are a lot calmer. So I think that that is one of the real keys. That shift for us has been one of the real keys to having an ongoing pipeline of innovation, while at the same time, you know, keeping things high quality and stable.
Yeah, who knew that calm waters could be exciting, and it absolutely is. Stephen, from your perspective, as you reflect on all of the various developers and enterprises you engage with on a daily, monthly, yearly basis, in terms of Java's evolution, what really stands out in terms of where Java is today?
Well, I mean, I think as we said at the top, the historical trend is for, sort of languages to have their heyday and, then to become, well, sort of legacy, used in a pejorative fashion often by folks in the industry. And I think the reality today is that, I'd have to go, sort of back and check, but I don't think Java's ever been lower than 3 in our rankings. And, for a language that's nearly 30 years old, I mean, that's more or less without precedent. So, when we look around today, it is, there are, however many millions of applications, sort of running businesses today written in Java, some of which have been running on sort of app server, technology for a couple of decades at this point. Many of it sort of written in, written and deployed to containers, that you see it in serverless, you see it basically in every sort of aspect of the enterprise. And, you see it, sort of in all kinds of places, right? It was interesting when, we had the sort of big data, phenomenon when Cassandra was written and Hadoop and sort of all these projects. And, not coincidentally, all of them chose Java, right? And, we see this sort of pattern over and over, right? So, on the one hand, I think, and I've noted this to Java audiences forever. There are a lot of languages today that are in circulation, many more so, than when Java, sort of really first burst onto the scene. It typically was a much smaller, much less diverse environment. But in spite of all the growth of, sort of all these, sort of other languages that are in common circulation, Java is still basically everywhere, right? And it is, sort of in enterprise standard. And, given the language's ability to adapt up to this point, there's really no reason to forecast, that it's going to go anywhere, because in all likelihood, as the world continues to evolve, whether that's, sort of along WASM lines, there's a bunch of different sort of paths that, we can go down, AI and otherwise, it seems likely, certainly based on the past couple of decades, that Java will find some sort of role moving forward.
Yeah, you touched on numbers, and we've mentioned Java being in its 28th year, on the precipice of 30, which is an interesting shift, because Java 21 is just around the corner. And 21 all has meaning in many cultures, and here in the US it's considered the coming of age, becoming an adult, and I think Java's already proven that it's ready for prime time. But the Java 21 release is just another demonstration of that continual onbeat of incremental innovation. Chad, we look at every release as equals. They are production ready, quality releases, and but Java 21, I think, does have some uniqueness into it. There's some features I think that many developers are going to find pretty exciting. Is there something that stands out for you from Java 21 that the developers should be aware of?
Yeah, we get this question a lot, and of course, picking your favorite feature could be like, saying you have a favorite child or something, which I think is discouraged to pick favorites. Of course, I think somebody on this call is going to talk about Project Loom and virtual threads. That's probably one of the most exciting and anticipated things. But as a developer, particularly a developer who I come from a world where we worked a lot with serverless functions or smaller microservices and startups, as opposed to the sort of bigger, heavyweight, EE type apps, enterprise apps. I'm really excited about Amber, Project Amber, and all of the really cool things coming out of Amber. So, records, record patterns, pattern matching, record destructuring, even text blocks and local variable type inference. It just makes the language so elegant and so beautiful, especially if you're doing things like data manipulation, like grabbing data off a JSON API and pulling that data in and testing to see whether it's of a certain type. And if it is, then doing something with that data downstream. Doing that with records and switch expressions, pattern matching for switch, with record destructuring to get the data out. It just makes it so much more elegant to write. And it's like when you think about these things in your head and then you're thinking about what the code looks like, the code ends up looking a lot more like what you had envisioned, rather than a bunch of kind of boilerplate code to get to something as simple as grabbing data off an API. So I'm super excited about all of the great stuff coming out of Project Amber.
I can see Donald just biting at the bit to talk a little bit about Project Loom and virtual
Uh,
threads.
no, you should ask George to talk about Loom and virtual threads. I was thinking, hey, the DevRel guy is excited about features that make development easier.
There is that too.
What a surprise!
There
What a
is that too. But
surprise.
the
So,
demos for virtual threads are pretty cool.
yeah, I'll let George talk about virtual threads.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I think you know, virtual threads, of course, have been available in the last couple of feature releases as a preview feature, and are becoming final in 21. And I think that, you know, this has been a really, really highly anticipated feature. And one of the things that's nice is because it's been available in preview format and it hasn't changed, you know, a great deal. In fact, almost not at all in the final version. A lot of folks in the industry have already been looking at this, already been playing with it, already been adjusting their frameworks or libraries to use it. You know, unlike the things that Chad was talking about with Amber, this is probably not a feature that most developers will come up against right away, because most people don't write low level, you know, threading code. They're used to getting certain set of facilities from whatever framework or library they're using, like maybe a thread pool or other things like that. But you know, what this kind of does is allows the already great, you know, scalability story for Java to become, you know, 10 or 100 or 1,000 times better. Literally, you know, it sort of makes it so that all of the complexity that those frameworks needed to deal with in the past in order to try to give you, you know, good scalability now just scales, you know, much better, while also keeping their complexity low. Now, you know, in the past, there have been techniques that, you know, these developers have reached for in order to try to achieve that scalability, like asynchronous or reactive programming, you know, which can actually, you know, achieve some of those goals, but at the cost of a lot more complex code, and code that's, you know, harder to understand what's going on with, harder to debug, and, you know, APIs that tend to eventually permeate everything you're doing, right? People would sort of start this way and they'd be like, I'm going to use it just for this one little area of my system, but then eventually everything is done that way and they can't debug a thing or figure out what's going on or reason about their system in the large. And, you know, virtual threads, you know, don't have that complexity. They let you write in a simple model that, you know, people already understand. It's natural for Java programmers, and yet scale really, really well. And I think one of the things that's coolest about it is it's another one of these examples, like when Lambdas were added to Java, where the team really thought about this, really took their time, didn't just sort of take the first approach they could and sort of throw it into the language and the platform. Instead, they thought about, how do we make this simple, natural, make it so that existing code works really well, and the shift to use this is going to be, you know, easy to understand, and really came out with something where, you know, the result is really simple and beautiful. And, you know, that's the kind of thing where I know there are going to be people who come back and say, this is so simple and obvious. What took you guys so long? And we're going to say, that's what took so long. It wouldn't have, you know, if we had shipped something faster, it would not have looked this elegant. It would not have worked this seamlessly. It would have had all kinds of rough edges. And we took the time to do it right.
I've heard in
So,
some hallways and watering holes that you know, virtual threads may be even bigger than lambdas and generics if we look back on this after a few years. What are your thoughts on that?
that's a good question for Stephen, actually. You know, it's basically, Stephen, imagine 3 years from now, we're looking back at the impact that Loom had on especially third-party libraries and applications. And if we were to compare that to the impact of lambdas from Java 8 and generics from Java 5, how do you think it'll compare? Or maybe I'm missing some other major
Modules.
mod.
Yeah, it was funny, you know, when we were first briefed, I can't remember, you know, we had this conversation within RedMonk, you know, hey, what's the sort of, where do we think this ranks? And, you know, our answer was TBD, right? You know, because the difficulty for us is that, you know, we always sort of laugh that we can tell you sort of when things are going to happen, but we can't tell you, or we can tell you what's going to happen, but not when. And when it comes to features, right, it's really difficult to predict, sort of, how they shake out. What isn't hard, however, is, sort of looking at, the release of certain features and thinking, okay, yeah, I don't know precisely where this ranks, but this definitely stands out, sort of in a sea of releases. And, from the first conversations we had on Threads, it was pretty clear that this is going to rank up there. Where precisely it ranks, you can check back with us in a couple of years, and hopefully we'll have some actual data for you. But
we will.
Hold you to that. We'll definitely hold you to that. And
right.
it's both a challenge and an opportunity, considering we oftentimes say there's 10 million or more developers out there, and that's a large pool of developers to try and ensure we're bringing value. But it's also this notion of what's happening with the next generation that's aging in and starting to use Java. Chad, any thoughts on some of the enhancements we're doing in Java, especially in 21, that can pull in that next generation, be part of that pool of 10 million developers?
Yeah, I mean, I think from a high level, a lot of the work going into the platform, all of the work is preparing the platform for a world in which many of these future challenges our future developers are going to have to face. So, things as simple as like Project Panama having to work with machine learning and data science, Amber that I talked about, more of this data-oriented, these patterns, Loom for high concurrency microservice applications, things that need a lot of high concurrency, ZGC for high throughput, low latency garbage collection. But I think that you might be hinting at unnamed classes and instance main methods, which is a preview JEP in 21, which we are excited about. I will mention because, essentially, I do think it will have a big impact. Probably people who've been working on the platform for a long time, enterprise developers who are not writing your average hello world that often won't see it as much. But for students and learners to get to the first characters printed out on the screen, to take some input in from the command line and be able to do something quickly, it's going to reduce the amount of concepts that they have to learn. I think I heard someone say the other day that there were like 25 or 30 concepts that you have to learn to get to the first Hello World program to print something in Java. And this reduces it significantly to the point where you can literally just type void main and then system print outline, system out print line. And we might even be able to get rid of the system.out part as well in a future preview of this. But I'm pretty excited because I think this is going to have a big impact for students. Perception is reality, Shar, as I tell you probably 3 times a day. And the perception of Java tends to be that it's, heavier weight and more enterprisey and takes more characters to get to something. And this is really going to help with that perception to get students, getting to Hello World quicker.
Well, in terms of the whole concept of perception is reality, part of that is addressed by ensuring we stay connected to developers. And, Stephen, I don't know how many times I've read your publication, The Kingmakers. It's literally on my bookshelf. It's something that I refer to. And sort of like the 3 tenets in there is the whole concept of learn, share, and collaborate, which just extends to the value that developers have with helping technologies evolve. For our ecosystem, why are developers so important?
There are a whole range of reasons for the Java ecosystem in particular, right? It's relevant for a couple of reasons. First of all, the more developers using Java, right, the more talent there is, for those who want to write applications in Java, right? And that could be sort of small startup all the way up to sort of largest enterprise. The more people are familiar with the language, the better. But just as importantly, for every language community, the larger it is, just the sort of more resources that are available in the form of libraries, frameworks, documentation, forums, events, meetups, like call it what you will. We were sort of laughing the other day, sort of with a colleague about, talking about, oh, hey, I had this experience at this Java user group, and we were all comparing notes, like, because we've all been to Java user groups, right, sort of at one time or another. And it just speaks to, sort of the size and scope and range, sort of the community. And like I said, the sort of the benefits of that, for the technology itself are, it's a, too wide an array to talk about, really, to characterize. But, you have, real hard, tangible outputs that matter both for the developer and for their employers.
Yeah, George, a lot of folks don't know, but besides your team focusing in on the actual development, maintenance of Java, your team is also responsible for all of that ecosystem outreach. And so, foundational programs such as what Stephen had mentioned in terms of Java user groups, while important, we know with 10 million developers, there's probably dozens upon dozens of modalities in terms of how they want to stay connected. In terms of that evolution, what are some of the new programs that really stand out to you in terms of forging that learn, share, collaborate perspective?
Yeah, I think there are a number of things that we've been involved with. I mean, obviously, supporting the Java user groups around the world is tremendous, right? It's a fantastic resource that many developers have tuned into and kind of understand that they exist. And other ones haven't. So I think that's something that I think is sort of on its way to a resurgence as we kind of get to post-pandemic and people are starting to have more meetings and meetups and that kind of thing. I've personally been had the honor of being able to go around and be at some of these meetings around the world. And every time I do, I love seeing it because it's people helping one another, it's helping each other learn. It's talking about topics of mutual interest. It's giving people an opportunity, to hear from, sometimes industry luminaries, but also sometimes get experience themselves with giving a talk about something they've done. And another thing that you always see there is people talking about, job opportunities, right? So, who's looking for people, who's looking for a job, and, it's a great kind of place for that kind of connection to happen. I think there are a lot of other kind of programs going on, though. I would say that, one of the areas that I really care about a lot and people on my team care about a lot is educational outreach. And so that's kind of an area, you were mentioning earlier, the things that are being added to the Java platform in order to try to help make it a more accessible languages for people who are students, who are learners, either learners of Java or learners of programming in general. And so, that's something that I think we're going to see a lot more of, going forward. But I may not have hit all the things that you're interested in,
No,
Shar. So
I actually love that.
what are some of the programs you think we should?
Yeah, well,
talk about?
I think you definitely put to the surface an important area, which is education. That's been a hallmark of part of Java's success, in that we continue to allow for an open and collaborative landscape. We just need to remind that next generation that the doors are open. And I think we show how the doors are open by the programs that we deliver. And Chad, I know your team carries a lion's share of that responsibility. What are some of those programs and channels that your team has invested in and continue to invest in to keep those doors open?
Yeah, a lot. A great place to start is dev.java, the website. Wait, I think it's on my back. Is my back? I'll capture that for the webinar. Inside.java. So dev.java is a great place to start where you can get hundreds of tutorials for all different skill levels. We're actually just about to start accepting community contributions as well. So you can contribute your own content from the community. It won't just be content written from folks at Oracle. We're really excited to have that. And then Inside Java is a great place to get all the news and content written directly from folks who work on the platform. We aggregate it, make it really easy to search and find. So if you're interested in Project Loom, we've talked about that. Click Loom, boom, boom, all the content from all the people who work on Loom. If you want to follow Brian Getz because you love everything he talks about as one of the language architects, click Brian, boom, got all the content from Brian. Of course, we've got our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Java, where we've got a bunch of great new shows that are highly engaging and we're getting a lot of feedback there. And then we've got podcasts and a newsletter and a whole bunch of other stuff. So I think that's most everything.
Yeah, it's a pretty rich portfolio of mechanisms where developers can either consume information, share information, or participate sort of in the process. Donald, you've had a career arc where community has been front and center in so much of Java's development evolution. I'm just kind of interested from your perspective, what is the importance for the ecosystem as you view it?
In terms of community, well, I think it all just stems from the very early days, right? And so how I remember the very beginning of Java. we talked about Prolog a couple times, but I'm one of the old dudes that knows small talk, right? So when I came along, small talk was entrenched in every bank and insurance company and government, and that's where the money was. And then this Java thing came along, and it's like, they don't have a chance. I mean, it's not even pure object-oriented programming. How can this Java thing possibly take off at all? And I was pretty young and naive at the time, but I think one of the things I grossly underestimated was the value of community. And that very quickly, several large enterprise software companies got together. The JCP was formed, and it was basically put out there that we need to work together for the betterment of the industry. And all the organizations that were involved all invested in all the community things that we've been talking about. Everybody had developer relations. Everybody was concerned about education and training and getting developers up to speed. Everybody saw the importance of all that. And I think that momentum has really continued. And I'm just super proud of Oracle's stewardship and leadership over the last decade, keeping all of that going. We have a very healthy, competitive ecosystem. We invest our part, and our competitors invest their part to the betterment of everyone. So that's how I look at it.
Yeah, and if it wasn't for the ecosystem, I wouldn't even be sitting here. It's literally what leapfrogged my career into the Java space. It was all about people first. There's that Hollywood quote, "Build it and they will come." I think that only works on the big screen. And, for something to really work, especially technology, is building out that user base. And it's not just consumption of the technology, but the ability to shape its future and participate in its evolution. And we have so many dimensions in terms of affording developers that, whether it's through OpenJDK, where there can be an active role in that development, or through some of the channels that Chad mentioned, whether it's inside.java, putting on a podcast, participating in a Java user group. That sharing of knowledge also makes the language and the platform so much better and enriching from our shared experiences. We're coming up towards the end here, and I just wanted to close with, we've all shared our personal stories, but one thing I want to ask each of you, and we'll go around the horn here, is why Java matters to you. And I thought, Stephen, maybe you want to start with that. Why does Java matter to you?
I think honestly we've talked about it, right? So in other words, our role is not to champion any particular technology company or what have you, but I think one of the things that we do enjoy, right, and makes particular technology stand out are the people, right? This is going back decades at this point, right? Where it has been a real joy to interact with people in and around the language, to watch the spirit with which they work together. Sort of on shared tasks, and these are often people who are competing with each other fiercely from a product standpoint. In the true sort of open source spirit, are able to come together and say, all right, hey, we may be sort of competitors, but we're ultimately on the same team, right? And that's just it's a pleasure to deal with folks that are really sort of all pulling in the same direction, for the greater good.
Thanks, Stephen. And Chad, how about you? Why does Java matter to you?
I'm just excited and honored to be able to go out and champion a product that's been around for almost 30 years, a language and a platform, and to still, to this day, watch the excitement on younger faces when they get to experience like their first program or see something move or do something interesting. And you can just see sort of the future of engineering and the future of things that could be world changing in the eyes of younger developers. And it's exciting to watch. And even professional developers today that might venture off to start startups and choose Java, it's really exciting to be part of something that could potentially enable world-changing technologies.
Donald?
Yeah, it's like I remember early in my career being involved in a project that got basically put into ATM machines, and every time I went and used an ATM machine, I would think I had something to do with that. Like I had an impact there. And I think That's the beauty of the Java platform, is how many people, organizations over the last 30 years can honestly say the exact same thing. I had something to do with the success of that product, and billions, if not trillions of dollars of economic value for all the enterprises around the world that have built systems and applications around it. And I'm super proud to be involved in a project that has brand recognition, right? Like I can literally be in the dentist chair and they'll say, "What do you do?" And it's like, "Oh, I'm the product manager for Java at Oracle," and they know what that is, right? Like, and that's a fairly unique thing as well. So yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing as I point my children to where Java has enabled the world, from social platforms to smart cards to smart printers to kiosks, to some of the largest banking platforms out there. They have this aha moment. It's like, Dad, you work on something pretty important. It's like, pretty important? No, it's very important. So and that's the kind of energy I want this next generation to understand. Is like, there is so much Java in the world. It's just upon us as the stewards and leaders to expose that. So there's the right perception being built around it. George, I think it's great if we can close with you, because you've been so foundational to where Java was and where Java is going. Why does Java matter to you?
I think for me, it's the thing that has been true for Java from the very beginning, is it was designed to be a language that gives the developer a lot of power, right? It's a powerful language. And yet, on the other hand, it's approachable, and it's not something that requires, 5 degrees in computer science. It's not a sort of ivory tower thing. It really is kind of a language for everyone. And so, I've been just immensely proud to be a part of this for all of these years, and, kind of the ongoing work that the team is doing to continue to further that vision. And, the fact that means I get to work with all you guys, but also with, everyone in the extended Java community. So thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate all of the combined leadership on the Java team. I also appreciate Stephen, folks like you that keep us honest and give us perspective as far as what that landscape looks like. And that open dialogue is important. And that's how we make better decisions, with that level of transparency. And that's been also at the heart of Java, is that level of transparency. We're open to ideas. We're open to criticism. And that's what keeps us healthy. Gentlemen, I really want to thank you for your time helping us through this conversation, this inaugural Java Fireside chat that we're doing, and I'm looking forward to doing more of these in the future. And with that, thank you for everyone for tuning in today.